All right. So thank you again for everyone for joining us today. My name is Remy Sabori, a Senior Partner Marketing Specialist at PTC, and welcome to part 3 of our AR Summer Series with featured AR partner Illumination Works, featuring Studio. So today, I'm proud to introduce once again Jim Blau, Digital Transformation Expert from ILW, as well as John Mitchell, CEO and CTO of Illumination Works, as they will go over all things Vuforia Studio. So again, just a quick reminder that this presentation is being recorded for your reference after the live session is over, as well as any questions, please use the chat functionality box at the bottom of the screen to submit any questions, and we'll do our best to get to them as early as possible within the session or after the fact. So why don't we go ahead and jump right into it? Go ahead, Jim.
So thank you, Remy. So as we get started to talk about Studio and all the exciting capabilities, I'd like to go back and revisit these 3 pressures that we see impacting the industrial marketplace. The first one is the worker skills gap. We're seeing high turnover rates, jobs being unfilled, a number of older employees eligible to retire. We look at complex products. We're really putting a lot of pressure on our service and maintenance organization with the number of configurations, different models, just accessing the data. And then customer expectations. We live in an Amazon world, right? We expect instant capabilities. We expect things to happen quickly. Also, we live in a very global world. So it's a very, very tough competitive environment that the companies exist in. So a few ways that a 3D work instruction tool like Studio can address these types of challenges are, first of all, we can connect to our employees critical information. So in our case, we're going to talk about CAD information, drawings, other pieces around the equipment. We also can connect IoT data, so data that's captured off a process or a piece of equipment, and we're able to present this in a very intuitive and interactive way. This idea of complex products. We can provide work instructions that are really tailored to the product or configuration. So this really helps the employee to accurately and safely operate it, QA it, or even repair it. And then we provide this capability for a workforce agility and flexibility. This means we can train workers on different environments because we have this immersive, detailed work instructions and training instructions we can put in front of them. We also get very high retention. As we mentioned in the expert capture session, we're in today's typical learning, we lose 90% of what we learn in a week. We're able to overcome that with the immersive environment of Studio. So what is Studio? Studio really is a rapid authoring AR environment that enables an industrial content creator to effectively create and share an AR experience with frontline workers. John's going to show that to us today. As a result of this capability, we can really boost the workforce safety and capability because we have this immersive environment for them. We're going to then turn around and improve, whether that be the operations, whether that be quality, whether that be inspections or maintenance or service. And all this leading to increased revenue opportunities, increased revenue, increased customer satisfaction. So how does Studio do that? We have a real accelerated time to value. As you see, when John will be presenting and taking you through the capabilities of Studio, it's a drag and drop environment. It utilizes templates and widgets. There isn't a whole lot of programming needed to use Studio. We can precisely display information. This introduces something called a tracking method. And there are various types of tracking methods. This is where we basically couple our digital experience with the physical world that it exists in. A couple examples, we'll talk about spatial targets. Spatial targets is what John's going to talk about. We can put this in any type of flat surface. Also, this concept of ThingWorks or thing marks. Thing marks, you kind of think about a QR code. Is I can actually go up to a device, scan the code, and then that will take me into the experience. We're able to provide this in a true enterprise environment because of the tools we use. It's scalable because it's available on all types of devices. And we can marry IoT insights with AR. This is going to give us more and more information so that our workers, maintenance team, operations can be more efficient. So what is made up of this studio product? The studio part, which is the authoring and publishing capabilities, and then View, which is how I access it and view what I've created in the studio. So here are the capabilities of Studio. It's a very efficient tool to create AR work instructions. And you'll see from John's demo how that really works. I can easily incorporate not only CAD, but also animated sequence. He's going to show the top of a drill press opening and closing. I mentioned we can leverage this with IoT data, get better insights to kind of take it to another level. And we can train in and out of context, which means I can actually take this image, this experience, I can place it on a desktop, or I can place it out into my factory. View, so that is a free downloadable, whether you have Google or iOS or Microsoft, you can just download that from the stores. It's universal. So once I've created it, that viewer is the same no matter what environment I'm in. Thus, I can share this to all my workers. So I can have someone with an iPhone or someone with a tablet or even with a workstation. And then I can actually also have offline experiences where I can download this to areas I don't have access to the internet. I mentioned these different experiences. So I can use mobile, what you would think, Android, iOS, Windows, or I can do 3D or 2D eyewear. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to John, and he's going to show you the capabilities of Studio.
Thanks, Jim. So what does the ecosystem look like? First and foremost, and Jim's gone over it, you have Studio and View as the main pieces. We also have the Experience service, which allows us to publish and basically acts like a hosting environment for those augmented reality experiences. This capability all runs on top of the ThingWorx IoT platform, another PTC premier product, allows us to connect to information, whether it be from source systems or from sensors on the specific pieces of equipment, and pull that data into our augmented reality applications. We're not going to show that for this one. Look for a demonstration on that in our fall series come December. And on the left, we are going to take advantage of native computer-aided design or CAD files. We can also take advantage of other media types, pull those in, and create a very rich and quickly published, built and published experience. Next slide, please. Just wanted to give everybody an outline of the basic steps of what we're going to do, and I'm going to demonstrate all of these steps here in just a second. We're going to show you CAD illustration with Creo Illustrate, which is PTC's CAD illustration tool. Because with any 3D object, I need to have the ability potentially to animate that, to show a series of procedures. For this particular demonstration, we're going to continue to use the Harbor Freight 8-inch 5-speed drill press to build on our chalk and expert capture webinars from previous weeks. But in this one, we're going to show you it with 3D CAD. We're going to show you how to configure and create a Vuforia Studio project, add 3D assets, add 2D assets, bind those assets. So this is our drag and drop capability. So as I click on buttons, I want to be able to interact with my AR application. I'm going to do so via drag and drop capability. I'm going to add some styling. So it's not just plain vanilla. Think of anything that you can do with cascading style sheets from a web application perspective. We can pull that kind of styling and functionality into our AR applications with Vuforia Studio. I have the ability to preview that experience. So test it, work through any bugs, get to the point where I'm comfortable with it. Then I'm going to publish it, and I'm going to show you viewing it on my iPad. So I'm going to switch over to screen presentation. Are we seeing my screen?
Good to go.
Great. So what I have in front of everybody is Creo Illustrator. And I think the key to any AR application is going to be, what's the use case? Well, like I said earlier, we're going to continue to use the drill press, and I'm going to demonstrate the same procedure that we used in the other two, which is how to change the belt speed. First and foremost, I open my Creo Illustrator application, And I'm going to import a CAD file. And for this, we're going to pull a detailed CAD file of the drill press. I'm going to import that. And I'm going to create a figure. So when I first start this, I have this drill press as my first screen. Within my illustration tool, I can rotate it, animate it. It's going to present the way it normally does. But for me, in order to get access to certain piece parts, I need to manipulate it so that I can have access to these upper panels. So what am I going to do from this point? I'm going to go to my animation tab and I'm going to select sequence. And a sequence is a series of steps that allows me to play forward the various and animate the various piece parts of my CAD file to show a set of procedures. I'm going to create a new step by clicking on this left button. And you can see up here, I'm recording content. What this is going to do is as I animate different piece parts, it's recording this content and I'll be able to play it back in not only this Illustrate tool, but in my experience. I'm going to transform this top to show it moving. Now, I'm not actually moving it like it would be moved on a drill press because I'm using the default axes of this geometry. I'll show you a demonstration here in just a second where I've added an additional axis, which would be basically the hinges for that lid to show it actually moving. And that illustration is going to be the one we're going to show how to build an AR application with. So once I've demonstrated all the different animation pieces, things like moving the belt up and down, taking it off, I'm satisfied with my procedure. I stop recording content. I can save this illustration as a file. And then I'm going to publish this into a format that I can use in my AR experience, which is going to be a PVZ file. What this is going to do is going to package up my illustration and my CAD file so that I can then use it in Studio. I'm going to show you guys really quick the pre-configured drill press sequence of what this looks like if we actually complete it. I'm going to show you the preview capability, which allows me to step through this previously created procedure. And I've added some things up here like step descriptions. I've animated that to show you this is the part I'm moving, and I've created this dotted line axis to allow that hinge to open up on the correct procedure. I loosen my motor spring, I slide my motor forward, I adjust my belt on my pulleys, I slide the motor back, I tighten my motor spring, I close my lid, and I'm finished. So once I have this procedure created, this illustration created, I can create and configure my Vuforia Studio project. So for that, I'm going to switch over to a web browser. And Vuforia Studio is an application that runs on your desktop. And these are some previous projects that I have on my computer. I'm going to click this plus button in the upper right, which is going to prompt me for a project template. I have the opportunity to select 2D, 3D eyewear, or mobile, which is going to be the platform for any phone or tablet. And what that gives me is a predefined template to build my experience on. The experience service URL is our hosting environment, which for us is our test environment. We're going to initialize this project. And I have a couple different pieces here. I have some major action buttons up here on the upper right. I have my project navigation bar here on the left. I have pre-configured widgets that allows me to drag and drop and build this experience. My canvas is my 3D space. And as you can see, I've got X, Y, and Z coordinates. And over here on the right, I have a window that'll allow me to access the properties of my widgets as I pull them on. Before I get too far into this though, I'm going to do some configuration. So if I go over here to this configuration section and I click on experiences, we have what's called a thing mark association. And as Jim mentioned, that's going to allow us to associate specific data. Think of it as I have 10 machines and I want to be able to pull the information off of machine 1 versus machine 10. I have to be able to identify those machines and map that data. For this particular demo, we're not going to use a thing mark, so I'm going to select none. And then I'm going to go to the information tab. And on this tab, I have the ability to set some other configurations, add a description. But a couple quick things here. I'm going to set it for public access, which requires no authentication. So once I publish it, I'll be able to pull it up. And I'm going to set a minimum screen width to tablet because I'm going to choose that as my default. I could have chosen phone, but for sake of demonstration. The other option I'm going to check potentially here is allow download for offline viewing. As Jim mentioned earlier, we have this offline capability. That is an option by procedure that you have to select. I'm also going to hide the view navigation because we're not only going to use a single view for this application. So now that I've configured everything, I'm going to go to my 3D container, which is my workspace. And as I navigate to that, as I said earlier, I'm going to create a spatial experience. What that means is I can place this 3D application on any flat surface. It uses a auto AI video processor called plane recognition. That's going to allow me to recognize the surroundings and it'll allow me to place the AR application on my desktop here in a few minutes. I'm going to drag and drop a model now that I have a target so that I can start associating my 3D assets, or in this case, a single 3D asset, to my application. Over here in my properties on the model, I have to add my earlier created PVZ file. And then I have an option here to run a CAD Optimizer. What this is going to do is take that PVZ file and give me 4 different iterations with varying geometry fidelities that allow me to reduce the polygon count and allow me to create a faster download speed for my AR applications. We're going to use the high fidelity one because this is very simple CAD, but I have a very complex, a very rich CAD file. I potentially want to use one of the lower fidelity options as it does the import. The basic canvas that I've created is basically this 3D asset from the CAD file and from the illustration. We're going to set a couple parameters here. We're going to scale it down so that it doesn't show up absolutely huge when we pull it up. And I'm going to choose the sequence. When the sequence was that animation that we created earlier, and I'm going to say we want figure 1 to be displayed when I play a sequence. Once I have my 3D assets in place and I'm satisfied with what this 3D canvas looks like, I'm going to switch to 2D and I'm going to add the ability to interact with my 3D application. What you see here is some pre-formatted columns, rows that will basically be placeholders for when I pull up this application on my iPad, allow me to pre-position different 2D widgets onto the canvas. I'm going to add some very simple buttons to this application. I'm going to add 4 of them. And we have unformatted buttons. So what I'm going to do for each of these is I'm going to give them a name. And the name is going to be basically what are they supposed to do. So that's going to be a play all button. That's going to be a play button, which is going to start the animation, but basically put it in step mode. Next allows me to proceed to the next step in the procedure. And I also have a stop button. If I get to a certain point and I want to pause my AR animation, I have to have the ability to do that. Once I have these buttons, what happens? When I click on it, at this point, nothing. So what I have down here in the right side is a click event that allows me to say, when I have my AR application up and I click on this button, do something. So from a drag and drop perspective, I want to do something on my model. So I'm going to take that click event, and it's going to pop up a binding box. And by binding this click event to a service or an action, it's going to take action, and I don't have to write any code to get it to do that. So for this play all button, I'm going to say run the play all service and make that binding. I'm going to do the same for my play button. I'll bind it to my model, and it's going to say play. For my next button, I'm going to bind it to my model. I'm going to advance forward. And for my stop button, I'm going to tell it to stop playing the sequence. So now I have some basic interaction. I bound these things, and we'll demonstrate showing you this, but it's pretty bland looking. What Vuforia Studio has is the ability to add cascading style sheets in this application styles page. And we have the ability to pre-format and make some styles up. But for this demonstration, I'm just going to cut and paste some previously built CSS entries so that I can take advantage of that. So those of you that are familiar with cascading style sheets, these are some of the formats on this. But by pasting these into the interface, I can then take advantage and format these buttons, or really any 2D widget, with a class property. I have a button 3D and I have a blue format. What I've done here is add a little bit of 3D formatting to that, a drop shadow, make it look like it's 3D like the rest of the application, and I've colored it blue. And then because red means stop, we're going to format the stop button red. As you can see, I've got two different canvases, the 3D and the 2D canvas. I'm editing them separately because of the way the widgets are. But when I click this preview button, this is going to pull up a separate window that allows me to view my AR experience like it would show up in Vuforia View. I can also test this. I can say play all, and what it's going to run through is my animated sequence that shows me how to change the drill press speed. As I stop, it finishes playing the current step in the sequence and then does an advance. So in this particular instance, it's not closing the lid. So I'm satisfied with my AR application. I can close that preview. I can save this, and I have this option to publish this experience to my hosting environment, or AKA my experience service. And within Studio, it should prompt me for authentication. It's going to upload the project, as you can see up here in the window, and then I should get a project published successfully. Now that that's published, I can demonstrate and show you what this looks like on my iPad. For that, I'm going to use, give me a second here, a screen sharing application. And pull this over. And I am now mirroring my iPad to you guys. So I'm going to pull up Vuforia View. And I have a couple different options here. I want to pull this drill press web, which is the experience we just built. And as Vuforia sees my screen, I can place this AR experience in my 3D space. As you can see, as I navigate around and look at that, I do have the full 3D capability. And as I click play all, I'm able to see this in my space. Now, as Jim mentioned earlier, there are other capabilities around pulling in IoT data and pulling in and being able to lock on to physical targets. So I'm able to overlay something like this 3D CAD file directly on a actual drill press, so I could do that in my shop. So that's training in context, or procedure execution in context, or procedure execution out of context. Those are more advanced topics. So as I said earlier, look for those types of demonstrations later in the fall, November, December timeframe in our fall series. With that, I'm finished. I'm gonna turn it back over to Jim.
Thank you, John. So as we finish up, and we're getting kind of to the bottom of the arrow, John did a great job of showing the capabilities of Studio. And just briefly want to touch on some of the real capabilities that it brings, right? So with this 3D immersive environment, as you can imagine, I reduce costs, I eliminate errors, I increase the capability of my workers. As I accelerate training, because I now have this 3D environment where I can really view things, whether it be in context or out of context. And I can even use this in the sales cycle. Kind of imagine that I'm in a client location and I want to show my product, and I can actually take that AR experience and show that to them and put that on someone's desktop. And then finally is the whole thing that really the whole Vuforia portfolio is focused on is how do we empower our workers really across the entire enterprise. So one good example of where this worked out is with BAE Systems. So they're a global manufacturer. This specific use case is around the manufacturing of their battery cells for their hydro drive buses, which are electric buses. They had a huge increase in need for this. As a matter of fact, 350%. And they were currently using instructions that most people use, paper PDFs, and they were having real problems training. They were having production problems. And as a result of working with PTC and Vuforia Studio, they were able to increase this and overcome that. And as you can see in the next slide, they were actually able to increase their assembly line capabilities by 50% improvement, and also increase training by 30%. So they were training people 30% faster. Actually creating that instruction, they were able to do that in 1/10 of the time and 1/10 of the cost they'd done previously. So as we have gone through these last 3 webinars, just want to touch briefly again. We talked about Chalk, which is the remote collaboration tool, over-the-shoulder capability. Expert Capture is when I don't have any asset, I don't have ad, I don't have my CAD capability, I don't have animation. I can still provide that expertise out to my workforce. And then today's Studio and the capabilities of Studio. And these all, the basics of all of this is the engine piece of it. So as you can see, a real robust portfolio that is available from Vuforia. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Remy.
Thank you so much, Jim and John. And just to conclude, as John mentioned, we do have our fall advanced AR series coming up beginning in November. So stay tuned for more information on that. And we are up against it. So the questions did come in, we will touch on after the fact. And with any contact information or any questions further than the ones that have been submitted, please reach out to Jim and John here. And these slides and the recording will be provided after the fact. So again, thank you so much for attending, not just this session, but the entire AR summer web series. And from both PTC and Illumination Works, thank you again for joining us, and have a great rest of your day or evening or morning, wherever you are. Thanks again.